Hello and welcome to Task 10, Marking Flight Progress Strips and Flight Data Input-Output Device. So this is what your typical uh, flight progress strip is going to look like. This is the one that comes from the FAA on the top. It has designated areas where you can put designated things. I'll kind of show you how it's going to apply at Edwards specifically, and then how we apply IFR clearances as well. So the next one you see down, that flight progress strip is what you're going to see for a local flight progress strip. At the top left, where number 1 would be, you see his call sign, and that call sign is going to be Cobra 21. Down below that, on line 3, you're going to see the aircraft type. So for us, if it was this instance, it's a flight of 2, so that's going to be 2 F-16s. That's why you see the 2 and then the slash mark and then F-16. In the section 5, that's going to be the squawk. That code is going to be given to the aircraft by Sport. We're going to relay it to the airplane, but the actual squawk code is going to come from Sport through the CSE system. All right, now we move on to 8B. 8B for Edwards, that's going to be the proposed departure time. That's the estimated time that aircraft's going to be airborne, and so they'll probably taxi prior to that time. Now, block 9 we use for lots of things. It's our general block. So at Edwards, every aircraft that leaves has to get a VFR clearance for the most part out of Edwards. And that clearance comes from Sport. Sport's going to issue that clearance. Sport's going to issue that clearance. And that clearance is going to be a Poncho 3 or a Poncho 3 Barstow. So I have indicated here the P3B. For the Poncho 3 Barstow clearance. If we do not have the Barstow MOAs, they will just give him a P3, and you'll indicate that on the strip. It doesn't matter exactly where it is. However, it's best not to put everything right in the middle in case we have additional strip marking that's needed. All right, below that, you'll see the 120.7. That's actually our local frequency, but typically what that frequency is going to be is whatever frequency that their mission is going to be on that Sport gives them. And so that mission will be down there, so in case we need to monitor it, it just kind of lets everybody know what's going on with that. Additionally, you'll see the UC150. That UC150 is an unrestricted climb to 15,000 or 15,000 feet. And that's how we do the strip marking for that one. And we just put it anywhere in block 9. Below that is going to be a separate departure route than they would normally request, and that's a TL or turn left to PMD or Palmdale. Okay, and then in block 13 is FB. So if this was an arrival aircraft and they were coming back via the flyby pattern, we would put FB for flyby, and that helps the local controller indicate that what type of approach he's wanting to do. Block 12 is going to be the departure time. So we write the departure time of all of our aircraft. We don't pass that information to airfield management or to any other agency unless it's specifically requested. Otherwise, that information is automatically passed via the CSE system. Below that, you'll see the arrival time, which is 1953. And then again, we do not pass that information along. So you also see what we do for unwanted strip marking. The X will go across the altitude. So if this aircraft requested unrestricted climb to 15,000, and then later on tells you, hey tower, I'd actually like to amend that. I want to make that go up to 220. You would put the X through the unwanted altitude, and then right next to that, you would write 220. Okay. So that's mostly what you're going to see for our VFR type flight progress strips. There's additional strip marking, but that's mostly the basics of it. All right. So for IFR flight plans at Edwards, there's a lot of similarities. You'll notice in block 4, there's actually a different number. That number is the CID or computer identification number. That's going to be given out by the flight data system. The FDIO automatically is going to get circled through the NAS. As soon as that flight plan is put into the system, it's going to be given its own individual code. So that code is only to that aircraft during his flight. Once that aircraft lands and he's landed in the system, that number will be reissued to an additional aircraft. You still have his squawk, which is the 1476. The KEDW is his estimated departure airport, and then his actual, like where he's going to pick up his flight plan, and then the actual departure airport, which is KEW. in Block 8 Alpha is the P1800. That's his proposed departure time. It's similar to what we do for our strip marking. However, this is just a proposed. That strip marking is only good for a certain amount of time, and it's really important to know how long that's good for. When you get a flight progress strip, if there is no squawk up there, that means that is not within 30 minutes prior to departure. So you got that strip out early. When he's within 30 minutes prior to departure, you're going to get a designated squawk for that aircraft, and it's only good for an hour past the proposed departure time, or correction, an hour and a half. So once it gets to 1930, that flight plan is going to follow the system unless it's been updated. Moving on to the section 9, at the top you're going to see KEDW. That's the departure or the departure fix or departure airport. And next to that is going to be the next destination, which is Palmdale, and then back to Edwards. Sometimes they're a lot more complicated than this, but this is just an example of what it would be. Below that, you'll see, below and to the right, you'll see a B. That tells the controller that the flight plan has been broadcasted to the pilot, and that's important to put that strip marking on there so we understand that he got his clearance. Next to that is the TL. Again, this is going to be TL, and then there should be a line through the M, but it's turn left, direct Palmdale, climb, maintain 8,000 feet. Now that clearance is going to come from Josh Approach when he's ready for departure, and that's going to be how he's going to leave our airspace. Again, this is pretty rare. It should only happen when sport's closed or if we have the Palmdale corridor active, but we will get to that later. In the top right-hand corner, you'll see only 2 numbers, which would normally be the departure time. However, if the aircraft departs within the proposed departure hour window, so anytime within the 1800 window, then you can just write the last 2 of that number. So if he actually departed at 1910, we would have to actually write 1910. But from 1800 all the way to 1859, we can just put 1 through 59, any one of those numbers. And that lets us know what's going on. The check mark that you see next to it means that that's passed to airfield management. And we do that usually for IFR departures or whenever they request specifically to be notified of an aircraft departure. Next, for opposite direction operations. For opposite direction operations, the strip marking is fairly simple. In red ink, you're going to do the strip marking for that runway. So 5 right would typically be runway 23 left's opposite direction. And that's how we would write it on the strip. Doesn't happen a lot at Edwards, but it does happen. More commonly is for emergencies. You're going to put a big E. Now you don't want to make it a giant E that takes up the whole box. Big enough that everybody understands it's an emergency aircraft, which is pretty common. I mean, usually people know pretty quickly if there's an emergency happening. However, we can put that on the strip so it's pretty well identified. And then after that, we write the information. So next to it, I'll kind of break down some of that information. It's not in a set order. But we need to include a certain amount of information. The CPA is whenever we actually launched the primary crash phone. At 1945 is when it was launched. There's 2 personnel on board. That's the POB. Nature of emergency was hydraulic leak. The ETA was 7 minutes. The landing runway was runway 23 left. It says neg EPU, which is negative EPU. And when we get to aircraft characteristics, we'll explain what that is, but that's very important. For an F-16 type aircraft. And then below that, you'll have the termination time. That's the time that the emergency is actually completed and fire department has signed off on that aircraft that it's fine to go back to park or it can shut down and the emergency is over. There's no more hazardous operation. So we need to put down that termination time or terminated by who it is and then the time that it's terminated by. So next to Division 1, there should be a certain time there. Other than that, that pretty much concludes it for strip marking. Thank you.